All right, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And you see what we got here is the first personal foul on the fine system in the history of the show. Anthony's nervous because he thinks it might be on him. Do you have a guilty conscience? Is there something that you think that you did?
Did I do something, Mr. Craig Hoffman?
Nope.
Okay, good.
It was me.
Oh, man. Break it down.
In my discombobulation to start the show, I never hit play on the stream on the first segment. So to the YouTube audience, if you would like to know what happened in the first 15 minutes of the show, you can use the rewind feature in the free Odyssey app. You can go check it out. You won't be able to see it. No one ever will. Anthony, those were visuals that only our eyes will see. So that, to me, is a 15-yarder. That's a 15-point penalty. So I've got the fine board here. We're going to just go ahead and mark that off before Eric Bieniemy yells at us and tells us to hurry up. That's a joke from yesterday's practice, if you were paying attention. And that, I had 50 fine points. That's going to leave me with 65. It's going to push our total to 90. And if we pick up any 10-pointers, all right, we're 10 points away, so we could each pick up a 5. One of us could pick up a 10. We're going to be buying lunch on Monday. So this is where we're at.
Dang, that was fast, man.
That NA last lunch, not going to last much longer, man. Just got to do better. Got to do better. 15. Damn. All right. Let's get on with it, though, shall we? We've marked off the penalty yardage, and off we go. Rivera and company, a much lighter practice today. They went 2.5 hours yesterday. It was a long practice with long periods. Lots of high volume, high concentration work. And so after that, they decided to scale things down, take things a little easier. We know we had a little half a scuffle yesterday. Let's let the emotions die down a little bit. Drain some of the competitive juices, perhaps, just so they don't overflow, not to take the competitiveness out of things. And obviously, you start to pay attention to how guys' bodies are reacting. Here's Rivera after the lighter practice today as to why it was that way.
Well, the biggest thing more than anything else, try and change it up for these guys a little bit. Come out. We had a real good week last week. Then coming in this week, 3 hard days in a row, and we thought we'd back it off a little bit today in terms of the tempo, taking the pads off. We'll have the pads back on tomorrow, and we expect them to come back with a little bit more energy and a higher tempo practice for sure.
Anthony, you were out there. What did you see from, I'm curious what Bieniemy was like today, right? There's a certain urgency and a standard that he has that I don't think he really cares if they got pads on. I mean, we saw it the first couple of days of camp when they weren't quite in pads yet. But, what was he like today on a day that is intentionally a little bit lighter and easier?
Yeah, so EB, I think for the most part, he just wanted, the guys to finish their plays. So if you had a, inside zone run, he wanted you to, get through the hole and then, finish all the way to the end zone. If you had, a deep in route, finish the play. And that's all we continuously heard him say, finish the play, finish the play, finish the play. So, that's more so like what he was like. It wasn't too much yelling today.
Chase wasn't just barking at everybody?
People weren't chirping or anything. It was basically a glorified, walkthrough. A lot of install. They did get the crowd hyped a little bit. They worked on a lot of, play action stuff. So we saw Terry catch a couple of bombs. We saw Diami catch a couple of bombs. So I think today was just, all about some installs, not a lot of energy, but, those big plays down the field definitely did get the crowd excited for, something that was, a very chill practice.
I just love the way they're handling this training camp.
Yeah.
You need your hard days. You need some easy days. You want to stay fresh. Again, knock on wood. If I do this every day, then you can't say I'm jinxing it because, like, nothing's happened bad so far. But, like, they haven't had any major injuries yet. David Bada, the first one of camp, really. Sadiq Charles obviously has the tweaked calf day to day. Bada has a torn tricep, although he was out there, I guess you said. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I thought torn tricep, like, out for season, but just tape it up. Football player, I guess. So Bada, that your one major injury, but you haven't had anything bad happen yet because guys are in shape and they've managed it well. There was an expectation, like, you better come in ready because we're going to run a ton of plays. They've ramped things up smart. And, there's kind of been this emphasis on intensity, this emphasis on we practice a certain way, so we play a certain way. And building that way has been, as much as anything, the focus. Bieniemy driving that. I was joking with Nikki yesterday on the sideline, like, Eric's just got a formula. He says the same three things every single play. Get in the huddle. Or get it. No, sorry. They break the huddle. I started at the end. And I guess it's four things. There's a transitional one that I forgot, which is get in the huddle. So either get in the huddle at the beginning or the end, depending on how you look at it. Then they break the huddle, get set.
Mm-hmm.
Ball snapped. Doesn't matter if it's a run, a pass. I don't know who he's talking to. I don't know if it's someone different every play. I don't know if it's the unit as a whole. But it sounds like it's always yelling at someone. Go get it.
Yep.
And then finish. And then get in the huddle or get off the field if it's time for a new unit to come in. And, like, as much as the details and all of that stuff has been a part of what they're working on, obviously, like, that intensity and high level of execution and urgency and sharpness to what they do has been the emphasis more than any individual anything. And so what today is a day to not really worry about that and focus on the other stuff, which is, all right, we got to get the details of these route depths right. We got to make sure that this play that we haven't run as much, the timing is good, that we understand the spacing, right? Especially if you're working on, like, play action stuff. Play action, even more than a regular play, which is, football is spatial Darwinism, to borrow a phrase from one of the coaches in the Play Caller series that The Athletic did. But, like, play action manipulates that space even more than a regular play. So if all of a sudden you got two receivers that are running close to each other, you have a defender that can cover both, and you've kind of eliminated the point of, you've diminished the point of eliminating a defender with the run fake. And so things like that are, you do them half speed, you do them 3/4 speed. You chuck the deep ball, and, I don't think people should read too much into Terry, Diami, whatever, catching it, because at that point, the DBs know it's an offensive drill. They're out there to play shadow defense. I mean, they're out there to try, but it's not like you're going up super contested balls. It's like, hey, we're not going to contest catches today because we don't want anybody to get hurt. Like, the whole point is to execute this thing, be in the right position. Then, if the receiver goes up and makes the catch, then so be it. I care that you're in the right position, which is another good reminder that, like, going to training camp and just basing how people are doing off of the results, like, some of this stuff isn't schemed up to be a particular way, is missing the point of training camp. But they got a week. Tomorrow they're playing. Like, we're a week away from being a day away of the first game in Cleveland. And so they put the pads on tomorrow. They rest on Saturday, full off day. And then next week, I'd imagine they probably go pads Sunday, Monday, maybe Tuesdays, a lighter day, pads Wednesday, off travel on Thursday, and then game on Friday, something like that. So it's coming quick. And here's the other thing people remember, because I certainly could imagine someone just be like, they got to be in pads every day. It's like, no, they don't, one. But there's also a limited number, rules-wise, of, about padded practices. And so they've that you can't just burn them all out at the beginning. You want to build to something. So, hey, 2 days in pads, cool. All right, let's back off. Maybe then next week you go 3 days in pads, back it off. Get towards the middle of camp, back it off a little bit, save those padded practices, obviously, for going to Baltimore. And then, by the time you get back from Baltimore, you're starting to taper off a little bit towards the regular season and save some of these. I don't know when the exact cutoff date is, but eventually, obviously, you're into your regular season rhythm on the tail end of that third preseason game after you cut your roster from 90 to 53, and you're in pads to practice for an actual game, week 1 against Arizona. So I know it feels like it's a long way away right now, but it's just frankly not. And so the limits come in place. The ramping is still something that's happening. You're still on the up ramp, and really you're kind of on this ramp until you get to the Baltimore practices. Then you want to be at your crescendo, hold that crescendo for a little bit, maybe back off a little bit right before the third preseason game, give your guys a little bit of a rest, and then it's pedal to the metal, and you hope to continue to ascend all the way through the season. So a light day in Ashburn, but another productive one. Everyone seemed to be pretty happy with what they saw. We'll talk to JP Finlay about it coming up at 5 p.m. Coming up next, though, our guy Trey Wingo joins the show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app.
You can take the Team 980 with you anytime, anywhere with the Odyssey app, presented by your local Jiffy Lube service centers. At Jiffy Lube, they keep you moving. From oil changes and tire rotations to filters and wipers to a full range of service.
say in a minute. I want to talk about this first because you've been doing
right.
a podcast series for a little while called Half Forgotten History, if I'm remembering correctly. And this sounds like a bit of a spin-off on that, where you look at some very pivotal moments in the history of sports and what could have happened if things went the other way. It's called Making Waves. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Craig, always good to talk to you, man. It's just kind of a what-if scenario, right? Like, there's sort of there was a movie that came out in the late 90s called Sliding Doors, and the whole premise was that, I think it was Gwyneth Paltrow was the star of the train. And she made the train, the doors of the train car were sliding. And in one scenario, she gets on the train, and that's how her life unfolds. And in the other scenario, she doesn't get on the train, and their life unfolds completely differently. So it's taking a certain point in history and how it might affect the things that happen around it in sports. For example, a really interesting one might be what happens if Dan Snyder doesn't buy the Redskins? What if they didn't approve him as an owner? How differently might things have been? What happened if the Dallas Cowboys don't make, or the Vikings don't agree to, the Herschel Walker trade in 1989? How those two franchises went in completely different directions based on that one thing. And so that's sort of the premise we'll be working with. And I'm a big buff of history as well as sports. So we're going to also take things that that happened from a historical perspective outside of sports and how they might have affected what happened in sports at that time. So it's going to be a combination of all those things.
So is it something where you've got, the list of possibilities is endless here.
Yeah.
So how are you trying to narrow down like what makes it, an episode worth doing, especially in season one of this?
Well, that's a great question, actually. And I think what we're going to try and do in season one is not limited, right? I think let's take advantage of every possible scenario and find out what works best. And from there, we'll sort of work backwards. It's like if you're playing golf and a lot of people worried about and the instructor will say, no. Work backwards. Work from the putting and the chipping and getting the ball onto the green. Then we'll go back that way. So I think we're going to focus it on the core thesis and then work our way back from there.
So I feel like a lot of times these ideas start because you have one that keeps coming up. You talk about it you over beers or whatever with your buddies. Is there one of those that kind of spawned the idea that then you realize, well, what if we did it about this? What if we did this? Oh man, we have a podcast series here. Like what was Patient Zero?
Well, I'm not sure that we've always sort of had these discussions about, certain things that happen during the football season. Like to me, a game is like a river. One thing happens in the game that changes the course of the entire game based on momentum. So I've always sort of looked at not only seasons, but individual games as what was the turning point? What was the thing that flipped the switch? And if that didn't happen, like for example, Super Bowl 54, right? That epic comeback by the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Jimmy G had Emmanuel Sanders wide open for what would have been a go-ahead touchdown with about a minute to play. And what happens if Jimmy G hits Emmanuel Sanders? He overthrew him by 5 yards or 10 yards. You can go back and look at it. He had beaten double coverage. He was alone back there. So maybe the 49ers hang on to win that game. And maybe Jimmy G is cemented as a quarterback and is still playing there. And maybe Patrick Mahomes is that guy that starts to look like Dan Marino, who all of a sudden, hey, it's great. He's putting up all these numbers, but he hasn't taken a team to a championship. So it's just little things like that I think really spark the interest and can take you a million different ways.
Yeah, then I think it was the next year, if my chronology is right. You have Goff missing whoever it was, Cooks, I think, wide open in the end zone. Like
correct.
That's
correct.
Those things happen, especially in the NFL, because there's only 17 of them every year. Only 17 regular season games. Like that is what makes the sport great. Trey Wingo's with us here on the Hoffman Show again. The podcast is called Making Waves. It's from Wondery. It'll be coming out hopefully later this fall. Trey, early next year. What's the plan?
It should be coming up in the next couple of months. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome. So very much looking forward to that. And by the way, could have a great marketing opportunity just on every sports radio show in the country. Just sponsor the Sliding Doors Moment of the Week, brought to you by.
There you go.
I'm just saying,
Boom.
we can get our sales department in touch with yours.
I feel a collaboration coming, Craig.
Excellent. My life dreams have come true. Collaborate with Wingo on a brand new podcast. All right. Speaking of history, though, you used to year in, year out be on the desk for ESPN at the Hall of Fame ceremonies, and from talking to you over the years, like I know how much you love that. I know how much you love the history of football specifically. So what's it like? I mean, the game tonight is whatever. The Hall of Fame game, that is the nature of it. By definition, it is whatever. But to be in Canton on Hall of Fame weekend, what's that like?
It's very interesting because like the game itself, and I don't want to be dismissive here, but the game itself is sort of like, oh look, there's background noise. Hey, look, hey, football, because Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play, Deshaun Watson, like most of the starters aren't going to play. It's just sort of this exercise in, hey, the familiar has returned. So that's sort of what the game is. The experience of the weekend for me has always been the Friday night gold jacket dinner, and that's the time where the Hall of Famers get to put on their gold Hall of Fame jacket for the first time. It's presented to them on stage with their family, and their presenter puts it on them, and in perfect scenario, all these people are still alive and with us. And the emotions that those guys go through, because football to me, and I think Craig, I've shared this with you many times and your listeners, it's the ultimate team game. Like, baseball is a one-on-one confrontation with a pitcher and a batter, and everybody else is standing around to see what happens. Basketball, you can have two of the best players, and that's really all you need. In hockey or soccer, a goalie flips the script completely. A good one can win you games, and a bad one can take you out of them. Football is the only sport where it's all about the team. It's the collective we. We're all in this together. We've got to pull together 11 guys on one side of the ball, or we don't get anything accomplished. And then the Hall of Fame is completely individual honor. And it's just a very different thing. It's a different dynamic. It's a time in a football player's life where you're not recognized for the things you did together, but the things that you accomplished individually. And it hits people very differently. It hits players very differently. It's very emotional, and it's really, especially for guys that have had to wait, in some cases, far too effing long to see that come to fruition. It's just different than any other thing I can explain to you.
Yeah, no, that's so well put. You mentioned guys having to wait far too long. Obviously, here, all eyes every year are on Joe Jacoby, someone that we've been hoping in DC could get in for years and years and years. Do you think that there needs to be a change to the process, or is the difficulty of getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame actually why it means so much to guys when they do get in, and thus worth keeping? Well,
first of all, Joe Jacoby is absolutely a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's a question. What I would like to see is have more people vote. We have about 50 to 55 voters for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think there are, 400 for Major League Baseball? That's far too many. But to me, I think far too few people who really love the game are involved in the process of letting people into the inner circle. And I think if we expanded the number of voters, people who have the right to swing the hammer and create those magical moments, I think you'll see more guys like Jacoby get in. And I would like to see the Hall of Fame voters increase by 10 to 20 people, or maybe even as much as 30. And I think there are a lot of viable candidates out there who study the game, who are historians of the game, that I think would understand the responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's very well put. Also, I think for us in Washington, knowing some of who has been doing the presenting the last 2 decades, perhaps the new regime has more benefits than people realize for people that have been long gone from here. But that's a different topic for a different day. Trey Wingo's with us here on the Hoffman Show. Last Hall of Fame question for you real quick, and then get to the guys still playing. You obviously covered a lot of these guys over your careers, the Joe Thomases, the Zach Thomases, DeMarcus Ware, Darrelle Revis, Rondé Barber, these guys, the more modern players, if you will. Any particular story from anyone in this Hall of Fame class that really sticks with you, that you just have a great story about that guy?
Well, Joe, obviously the number of Joe Thomas, the number of snaps played, just the consecutive number of snaps played, and not games played, and all, but number of snaps. Like, you never missed a snap. Like, that's ridiculous, right? And I had Mitchell Schwartz on Half Forgotten History pod once when he was playing for the Browns. And they had an assistant coach. The game was won. It was the time when the Cleveland Browns didn't win a lot, so they wanted to rest their starters and all this kind of stuff. And this assistant coach said, yeah, you go in for Mitchell and you go in for Joe. And this guy ran onto the field, and Joe said, get the hell out of here, man. Like, no, you're not taking me out of this game. I had a friggin' streak of forever. Like, and the guy said, but coach said to come in. And Joe's like, I don't care. I'm not leaving. Go away. So the guy had to like slink back to the sidelines. And the assistant coach at the time then found out about the streak that Joe Thomas was going on. But the other great Joe Thomas story I'll tell real quick is that, in the last couple of years, the Broncos really wanted to trade for Joe. Like, they really wanted to trade for Joe to help solidify the line behind Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning called him and said, look, man, we really want you to ask for a trade because we're going to win a Super Bowl here. And they did go on to win a Super Bowl that year. We're going to do this. We're going to get it done. And you're the linchpin. You're going to be the thing that solidifies the line, and it's going to put us over the edge. And Joe's like, I'm just not comfortable asking for a trade. I've been in Cleveland my whole life. I want to finish the job. I want to be here when the turnaround is. So I'm just not going to go force a trade. And Peyton said to Joe, all right, then fine, just do this. Go up into the office of the general manager and take a dump on his desk. Then you're not asking for a trade. You just do this, and he will automatically trade you if you just drop a deuce on the general manager's desk. And Joe's like, I'm absolutely not dropping a deuce on the general manager's desk in Cleveland to force him to trade me out for soiling his papers. That's one of my all-time favorites.
That is, I mean, in all honesty, that's kind of cheating. That's more of a Peyton Manning story than a Joe Thomas story, but it's a great story.
But it involves Joe Thomas.
We'll take it. It does speak well of Joe Thomas's loyalty. And that's a good one. Didn't see that one coming. Trey Wingo with his stories here with us.
The general manager probably wouldn't have seen it coming out.
Well, he would have smelt it, but that's a different story. All right. The Commanders are in a very, very tough division as we take things on the field for a few more minutes here, Trey. Very, very tough division in the NFC East, but one where you never have the same team win the division 2 years in a row. The Eagles look very poised to break that. I think every team, it's seemingly outside of Philly, has some major questions. How do you see this division stacking up? And do you think the Commanders, I mean, a lot of people just go ahead and plug the Commanders in the bottom. Are you amongst that list of people?
I think realistically you have to walk into it thinking that way. I think that you have to say that look, I don't know. I do think there's a cloud that has been lifted from the franchise that they will respond favorably to. Okay. It's a weight that they don't have to deal with anymore. And and in football, Craig, as you know, little things sometimes go a long, long way. And I think that is something that might just be something that just can give them something that they just didn't have before, was this little thing called hope. And like, what are we going to read about next and what's going, that's gone. But I do think, I do think that right now you have to stack them as 4, but like you said, the best team usually never repeats in this division. And there are questions about the Eagles. They've lost some depth. They've lost both of their coordinators. How is that going to change things? And the last team to repeat was the Eagles, who had been 4 straight years or 3 straight years in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Cowboys are fascinating to me because I don't think there's a middle ground for Dallas. I think they're going to be very good, or I think they're going to fall apart. Because if they don't get it done this year, Dak's deal has to get redone one way or another, as in, okay, things are progressing. He's not going to lead the league in interceptions anymore. And we need to tear it up and get it to more team-friendly cap number. Or, well, that didn't work. We're going to blow it up. So I think the Cowboys will either blossom or they will explode. And I don't think there's any in between with them. And quite frankly, I don't know what to expect from the Giants. Daniel Jones got his contract. Saquon signed the thing with a little extra money. But, the owner of the Giants has already gone out there and basically said about the head coach, hey, I've seen a lot of people have one good year, but to be successful in this league, you got to sustain it. And which I thought was a very honest thing, but also a very unusual thing for an owner to say about the head coach that everyone thought was just the greatest thing in the world when he got in there. So the NFC East is always interesting, and I'm not putting anything past the possibilities of happening.
How much of an impact do you believe Bieniemy is capable of having here?
That's a really interesting question, because there were people in Kansas City and around the league that said, yeah, Eric's done a really good job there, but it's really Andy's offense. And look at the weapons. So I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't seen him outside the system yet. And like the fairest way to say it is that when Peyton Manning went from Indianapolis to Denver, he was the same player, right? Mm-hmm. When Tom Brady left New England and went to Tampa Bay, he was the same player. So that it translated, right? Their success and their ability was with them wherever they went. When Deion Sanders was the best cornerback in football, it doesn't matter who he played. He was still going to be that guy. So I think that the fairest way to answer that question is we'll find out the answer this season because Mahomes is not the quarterback and Andy Reid is not the head coach. And they don't have a Travis Kelce, and they don't have all these other things. So I think the only way I can fairly answer that question is to say I'll tell you in 17 games.
Well, that doesn't help me feel content for the next 17 weeks. I don't know, guys. Talk to you in January, but it's fair. What I think is interesting, though, Trey, and the last thing on the way out is being able to watch it up close, going to training camp, and watching the spring practices. It is, I don't want to say crazy, wild. It is noticeable, and is something that has certainly been a topic here, how much control Bieniemy has been given by Ron Rivera. And the only other example I've heard of something similar to this was a very different set of circumstances where Marvin Lewis basically ran the team while Steve Spurrier was practicing his golf swing up on the hill when he was here as the head coach. But that was a different set of circumstances. Is there someone in your career that you've heard of as a coordinator that had on one side of the ball, for whatever reason, just what felt like an outsized level of control, even if they were super competent and perhaps deserved it, and it was actually the best thing for the team? Because I think a lot of people here would obviously say what Bieniemy's bringing is definitely the best thing for the team.
Yeah, look, I think more importantly to what I think that tells you what Ron thinks. Right?
Yeah.
And if Ron is that comfortable with it, I think that should be something that makes Washington football fans feel comfortable. And, everything about Washington football feels comfortable again, right? That, like the lines to get into the training camp and practices as opposed to what they've been the last couple of years, it's been ridiculous. It's just, there's a whole new sort of revelation going on. But at the end of the day, there is the line that says, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Willies and Joes. And I'm not sure I totally believe in that because I do think coaching, putting players in position to succeed is important and it does matter. But we are talking about a coordinator who left Patrick Mahomes and is coming for Sam Howell, right? There's a difference.
Yes.
So so he's going to have to scheme it up. He's going to have to scheme it up to find things that will give Sam confidence early that hopefully translates into him blossoming into the quarterback that the team hopes he can be.
Yeah, to tie it all together, you talk about football being a total team game that does go beyond the 11 on the field. Scheme can elevate players, but players can also elevate scheme. And when it's Patrick Mahomes, he elevates whatever you're doing quite a lot because, well, frankly, he plays outside of it. All the off-schedule stuff that he does is just outrageous. All right, the new podcast coming this fall, Making Waves from Trey Wingo. What else do you got going on in the meantime if people want to check it out? What you got, Trey?
Yeah, well, there'll be another announcement soon about another pod with with an NFL player, so I can't say that yet, but it's coming. So I'll be happy to come back and come on the show and talk about that.
Done and done.
I'm also continuing my work with the 33rd team. I'm also continuing my work with Pro Football Network. And Mark Schlereth and I, former member of the Hogs, are doing a weekly show on an app called The Stunt, which is basically sort of TikTok for sports only. And you can come on there and you can create your own show, draft your own live rooms. It's the Stunt app. It's available in the Apple Store, App Store, also in Google Play. And it's just a format that's completely dedicated to nothing but sports talk. And we're going to be hosting a weekly show on that during the season. So go download the app and check it out, and we'll let you know when the show is on our socials.
That is very cool. Anytime you and Stink get together is always a good time. And I have it on good authority, although I shouldn't say too much, but somewhere early in the regular season, Stink will be having an up-close look at the Washington Commanders. I'm not going to, we're just going to keep moving past that, but I have it on good authority that is going to be the case. Trey Wingo, everybody. Trey Wingo, everybody with us here on the Hoffman Show.
All right, that is Trey. Appreciate his time as always. That podcast sounds very cool. There's often moments where I've thought about that in my career. It's like, man, if this just went the other way, like how sideways would it be? I mean, the Code Red game is the ultimate one, probably from my time on the beat. Obviously, I mean, on a much more grim note, Alex's leg injury, a big sliding doors moment. But alas, Trey gonna talk about them all, in and outside of sports and how they affected sports. On his new podcast. It's called Making Waves from Wondery, who's just launched new pods with Michelle Beadle and some others as well. So pretty cool stuff going on there. All right. When we get back, Anthony, you booked, you did the booking today for Not My Beat at camp. Just went up to JP Finlay and was like, hey, sir, what are you doing at 5 o'clock?
I don't think it went like this. Let me reenact how it went, Craig.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Friday?
I have seen the movie Friday.
So I'm Debo.
Okay.
And I'm walking up to Craig and Dede, who's JP and B. Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, JP. What are you doing at 5? It doesn't matter what you're doing at 5. You're coming on the Hoffman Show. It went like that.
Oh, that's much different than how I booked Nikki yesterday. I went up to Nikki and I said, hey, what's the rest of your day look like? What are you doing at 5? And she said, I'm guessing coming on your radio show. And I said, you don't have to. I would like that. That's what I'm coming here to ask you. But you're allowed to say no. You did not tell JP you could say no.
Pretty much.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, because he couldn't say no, he said yes. And so JP Finlay joins us next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 5 o'clock means it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
Our guy JP Finlay, of course, host B. Mitch and Finlay weekdays on 106.7 The Fan. And JP, first thing we have to do is confirm something with you because I asked, we've been trying to when we're out there for camp. I've been out there most days, wasn't out there today. But just go up to someone, hey, are you free at 5 o'clock? Can you come on the show? Everyone's like, yeah, cool. No, I'd love to do it. And I asked Anthony how did he book you today? And this is Anthony's version of events, and I'm just curious what it sounded like from your side of things. So Anthony, go ahead and play back your answer for JP.
Let me reenact how it went, Craig.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Friday?
I have seen the movie Friday.
So I'm Debo.
Okay.
And I'm walking up to Craig and Dede, who's JP and B. Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, JP! What are you doing at 5? It doesn't matter what you're doing at 5. You're coming on the Hoffman Show. It went like that.
JP?
Yeah, it was sort of like that, except not at all.
That's
no,
it's kind of what I expected.
That's my guy. You're my guy. Like, I'm happy to come on, dude. And Ant asked. I feel like today was a little crazy because we did like this segment with Pete that went long, and I'm kind of crazy anyway, so I feel like I was probably a little bit short with Ant, but it was totally reasonable booking.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of the funny part about it. If Ant had just been like, "Hey man, are you willing to come on at 5 o'clock?" You would have been like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." But he chose to do that because he did, and I guess that's where we're at.
None of that, Anthony. None of that happened. Are you going to tell Greg the truth?
JP, it is time for you to be honest with everyone here. Or do I need to go get Jeff and B. Mitch?
Did that really happen?
No, I'm joking. JP is really confused.
Yeah, because sometimes Anthony does this where he just like is in so far in his own joke that he doesn't realize like it's not funny and it doesn't make any sense and nobody like what planet are you on? So I think we're gonna do here.
Now.
Now I mean it took us to get it there. I'm gonna remove you from the stream, and you're out of this segment now. And I might assess you a fine because we got so far sideways. We'll revisit that later. JP Finlay is with us, of course, insider for NBC4 and host of B. Mitch and Finlay on 106.7 The Fan. So. They went hard yesterday, 2.5-hour practice. They decided to lighten it up today. The structure of practice has been a major talking point. What have you made of how they've handled the Eric Bieniemy era of being in charge?
I mean, it's definitely faster. And one thing I like is there's way less standing around kind of at any moment. I'm sure you've seen this. Now that they've had the pads on the last few days, when the O-line and D-line are doing their drills, they have 7-on-7 or wide receiver DB going at the same time, which I like a lot. It's highly like stimulating to watch, really, just as like a fan even. I checked in with a staffer over there because to me what I find pretty interesting is people talk about the pace, but I wanted like a number on it, and I was told that the actual plays being run in practice is probably up, maybe not quite 20%, but like 17, 18%, the number of plays going. And I was told for a couple different reasons. One, a lot of Scott's offense was play action vertical shot. So you got wide outs and then in turn DBs running 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. A lot of Eric's offense is much quicker. I mean, these are basic. This isn't Scott versus Eric. This is Air Coryell versus West Coast, right? Like it's a lot quicker timing routes underneath stuff. so the guys don't have to physically travel as far. And they've also done a lot of goal line work. I don't know if you've noticed that, Hoff.
Yeah,
but,
no, they have.
You know, when you're at the goal line, there's not as much room to cover. So it's like things are going faster, and the systems are different, and it all kind of pushes towards increased. I don't know that you could call it productivity, but increased
volume.
Volume.
Yeah. It's something that Logan and I have talked about, and it's funny because Logan's obviously been a lot of different places under different coaches, seen a lot of football, and his brain on day one of camp nearly exploded because it was an hour and a half practice, and I think they ran 80 plays, and he's like, I have never seen that before in my life. And so I think it's cool, though, because we all – like, we want to make it about this urgency, and there is that. Like, that is real. It's obvious to anyone that is out there. But like you said, there's so much thought that goes into it. And I feel like a lot of times when we talk about football in general, like, it's all this desire and want to and, attitude, effort type of stuff. And it's like, no, they're actually just smart in how they design practice, and then they have that other stuff. And I think it's smart, JP, that you point that out, because I think it also speaks to a larger, like, improved structure that hopefully will carry over into how the actual offense runs in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is, so B-Mitch played for Andy Reid in Philly, obviously.
Yeah.
And when they hired the enemy, he's like, just wait, you'll see how much more they run at practice. And I was like, what do you mean? Like running laps? He's like, no. It's just every drill, every in and out of the huddle, all the breaks are just so much faster. And sure enough, it's happening. And think about it, that was 20 years ago now, right? When Brian was playing in Philly. And, there's so much excitement around the enemy. And, I feel like the fans get really excited when he kind of, yells at players or is clearly excited on the sideline. But the truth of it is we have no idea if any of this is going to work. Like, you got a big problem at left guard. Howell has looked uneven. Like that. I think of it, you can kind of, not to equate the two, but when Chip Kelly really exploded at Oregon, much of that was he was just trying to run significantly more plays than the other team, right? But then Chip Kelly tried the same thing at Philly. It just completely didn't work. So I think the efficiency and the increased volume of practices and all that is cool. It's fun to watch. I still don't know that it's going to work because of the personnel.
JB Finlay with us here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. Of course, that's the same place you can listen to B. Mitch and Finlay every weekday, 10 to 2. All right, let's get into the personnel. You say how the word you use is uneven so far through camp?
Yeah. I mean, would you disagree?
No, not at all. I'm just curious, like, how you would expand on that. And, because, one of the things that I've been big on and talking about is, like, there is uneven by design. Like, some periods are harder than other. You're not going to be as good in a blitz period as you are in 7-on-7. And I feel like he's generally been kind of where he's supposed to be based off his experience level and my expectations of him period to period. But, if it's Patrick Mahomes, it doesn't matter if it's blitz, he's going to be great. Like, that's kind of the point. That's why he's Patrick Mahomes. But so I'm curious, as you expand on what uneven means to you, how that translates to kind of your I don't want to say prediction, but like your expectations of him, where you thought he would be and where he is and where he needs to go.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I honestly think he's exactly where we should all expect him to be. You said expectations a few times there. I think there are some wild expectations of him that I think people really need to dial back. People get really worked up on Twitter when he throws an interception. This is a young quarterback. He's going to throw a lot of interceptions. Like, if the total is set at, I almost wonder if they have those totals, but if it's 12.5 or something, like if you are telling me that he starts the whole season and throws 28 touchdowns, I got him at 15 picks, right? Like, that's what I expect to happen. And you're right, different practice periods are asking for different things. I thought the first day of pads, the first 11 on 11 was pretty messy for the whole offense. I thought the second day, yesterday in pads, was a lot cleaner. I thought he also got in and out of stuff fast. His first 5 snaps in 11 on 11 on the second day of pads, I want to say he went 4 for 5, and the quick stuff looked sharp. And that's what I want to see. I think he has some natural playmaking ability when plays break down and he's got to go off schedule. I think he can do well there. The intermediate stuff, there's been some accuracy questions, but if you can, what the enemy system, Andy Reid's system, Bill Walsh's system, whoever you want to credit it to, what the system calls for is a ton of misdirection, motion, and ideally he's identifying frequently a 6-yard gain based on the pre-snap motion, and the ball comes out fast and they get it, and the receiver runs out of bounds, the running back runs out of bounds, and it goes fast, right? That is where I think he's starting to get it more and more, and I think that's really encouraging. But you got to have reasonable expectations, and some of it is just like the social media amplification that comes from practice. I feel like Haney will know his name. I can't remember his name. You might know it. There's been I want to say a kid. It seems like he's like a college kid because I've had enough people send me these videos. There's a dude that's like tweeting every play, right? And the media's not allowed to do that. The media's not allowed to give out formations, all these sorts of things. And so then you have a practice like today that was kind of more of a walkthrough, install. Like, Howell looked great today, but it's geared for him to look great today.
Right. Today was an offensive win day, for sure.
Right. Right. And so, like, some of this you need to understand the context surrounding the performance at practice. It's why myself and a million others, I'm really excited for the Ravens joint practices. Probably even more so than the preseason game, but the 2 Ravens joint practices and then that Monday nighter against Baltimore, I think will be all we need to know. And it will be all we really get to learn in the preseason period. I also I don't know if you agree with me, Off, but I feel like Ron could certainly end it, but I feel like we're almost like manufacturing a quarterback controversy.
So I'm glad you brought this up.
Quarterback controversy. Yeah. There's none.
Yes.
Jacoby Brissett has gotten 0 snaps with the ones.
Correct.
0. If this was an actual competition, he'd get some work with the ones, and he's not, and we got to stop talking about it.
Yeah, no, that was literally what I was going to ask you next.
Himself, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it was what I was going to ask you next, and I was just going to go something or nothing, and that he keeps bringing up Brissett. And I can see that your answer is nothing. But he did it again, not just yesterday in the press conference. On the train ride down to work today, I was catching up on some of the interviews that Kay Adams did on her show. She got like 10 minutes with a bunch of people, and you get to a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I saw.
She did a good job with Ron and Sam and a bunch of folks. And he did it again with her, where he's like, don't forget it. And it's the same type of setup, right? Like, hey, we're asking you about Sam because we want your opinion on Sam. And Ron, out of left field, is like, hey, don't forget about Jacoby. And it's just like, what's the point? Like, we know, we can see. There is no point in bringing up Brissett because he has not thrown a route or had a snap where Terry McLaurin is on the field with him. Forget throwing to him. Like, we know what's up here. And I understand they want to give Sam all the reps to try to get ready, and they probably feel like if all of a sudden it goes sideways in Baltimore, they can pull the plug and go to Jacoby and just rely on his veteran nature. But you give him a couple of snaps. So I don't get why they're doing that.
I don't either, dude. I really don't. It reminds me, and I would credit, it's someone you and I both know, but they don't want the credit. Somebody gave me this analogy, and I think it makes a ton of sense. It's like an inverted Ryan Fitzpatrick situation. When Fitz was here and they signed him for $10 million, it was very clear they brought him in to be QB1. And then as we watched practice that year, he got all the work with the ones. But Ron wouldn't name him his starter, right? And he brought up Taylor all the time. it's a similar situation, except it's inverted in that Brissett is the backup and Sam's your starter. But for whatever reason, the veneer of constant competition, I suppose, he feels the need to bring Jacoby into it. I don't think it's I don't think the guys care. I honestly kind of doubt they pay attention, except when they have to do media. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. Here's the thing: like, you don't have to bring it up now. If Howell goes through Baltimore and then the game and looks awful, then you can just say, you know what, we're making a decision. Right? Like, no one believes it. I don't think. And if you're going to bench him, are you really going to bench him in August? I think that'd be crazy.
I mean, I think the overall thing, JP, is like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter whether he says it one way or the other. It's just kind of weird and awkward and forced. But like, yeah, if he stinks, they'll bench him, and they'll if he sucks for, let's say he sucks the rest of the week, this week and into next week, and doesn't play well if he plays against Cleveland, and that's something I'm actually curious if you think he'll get snaps being a younger guy. And just the 3 preseason games now. But then he comes back out of Cleveland and stinks again. Like, they'll get Jacoby some snaps against Baltimore in practice. But if he doesn't, then he won't. So, it's in that way, it's the same as any other position pretty much. And I just think it's weird that they keep bringing it up. The one I did find interesting today, though, is, he was asked about Chris Paul's performance, and he was very quick to bring Sadiq Charles back up and be like, don't get ahead of ourselves. That one, I almost feel like it's the other way, though. Like, that is a competition. That thing is on. And my money would be on Chris Paul winning the left guard spot. What about you at this point?
Yeah, I actually asked him that. And I do think Chris Paul is going to win the job. I mean, Sadiq Charles has never been able to stay on the field throughout his career here. But there are Charles advocates in that building for sure. And I think when you look at the two men, Charles looks like the athlete, looks like the better prospect. For me, it almost feels a little Moneyball-ish. In the opening chapter of Moneyball, Billy Beane, they kind of explained that Billy Beane looked like a 5-tool baseball player, and that's why he was who drafted him? The Mets, maybe? And he was like this huge prospect, but when it came down to it, he couldn't hit. Like, if you look at Sadiq Charles versus Chris Paul, like, you would want Charles every time, but Chris Paul's harder to block, dude. He's a better blocker, and he's harder to get around. And I know that there are defensive linemen that think Paul is harder to deal with in one-on-ones and such. So I think eventually, the merit kind of wins out there, and Paul wins that job. I also asked him about Mason Brooks, the undrafted guy who's kind of making an impression. And it is funny with undrafted guys. Like, you paid that guy extra to come here, so you clearly liked him. But, like, Ron and now other coaches have done this, almost immediately go into, like, full ball-busting mode about undrafted guys. They're like, yeah, he's showing us something, but he's got to keep it up, rather than if it's a draft pick, you're like, really developing, we're working with him. Like, it's just interesting, the different kind of demeanor and discussion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. JP Finlay with us for a minute or two more here on the Hoffman Show. Since I brought it up, how does he play against Cleveland a week from tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, you did ask that. I don't know, man. I really don't. In Ron's previous seasons, at least the last 2 in the preseason, he's had a veteran, right? So, yep. While, in hindsight, could Carson have used work? Maybe. Could Fitz have used work? Maybe.
Let's be honest. That wasn't going to help. The difference in Carson Wentz's success and failure in Washington had nothing to do with his preseason appearance or not.
I agree. But you had a vet that you didn't feel needed to play, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
This is not that situation. And maybe you want to get Sam to work. But, dude, what's tricky is Jacoby is your veteran, break glass in case of emergency or we're losing our season guy, right?
Yeah.
You really want him playing a ton in the preseason?
Get ready for the Jake Fromm Show, JP. Let's go! Go Dogs!
Dude, I think Well, one thing I am truly fascinated by, Jake Fromm has really struggled when he's been in NFL games. I think that's fair to say if you go back and watch it. I'm really surprised. This is a team that's played at least 3 quarterbacks in 5 straight seasons. I'm surprised it's not somebody with a little bit more of a resume in that 3 spot. And there are people that will tell you they liked what Fromm has done this camp. And maybe they're comfortable with him. And you can always argue by the time you're playing a third quarterback, you're probably screwed anyway.
Correct.
That's a probably legit argument, but I was surprised there wasn't more, that they didn't just try to address it more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I am big time. If you're on your third quarterback, you are already so far down the tubes that you just should stay there. Just ride it out,
Right.
Get the draft pick, especially where this team is, right? It's not like, it's not like if you're the Chiefs and you're on your third and you're like, well, we got Mahomes. It's not like we need the high draft pick. We're not looking for a quarterback of the future. With this team, like, if something happens weird, like, how close can you get to Caleb Williams? That's what I would want to know. Last thing on the way out, JP, I've kind of had this in the back pocket for 9 minutes now, but what do you, like, if you're a fan of this team and you go to training camp and you tweet out every play, do you hate winning? Like, what are you doing? Like, there's not even a question.
Who's the
I
guy
guess
I'm talking about? I want to credit this kid because he's
Do we?
grinding, man.
Do we? Like, Ant, do you know who I'm gonna bring you back into this? So we've come full circle. Don't screw it up. What do you know who JP's talking about?
I know who he is.
Can't think of his name?
Nah, not necessarily.
But it's also like some folks that are like bloggers and like trying to kind of be in the media, but they're there as fans, and I'm just like, there are rules in place about shooting practice for a reason. And look, do I think that teams are really going to win and lose a ton of games or a game based off of training camp film? By week 3, like you don't really care. It's game film. It is, you're watching that. It is what it is. But like, I've definitely heard of teams having like scouting interns and stuff scour the internet and just start to make a file because you just never know. Like, hey, they ran this in training camp. We haven't seen it yet. Like, I would just say this. If you're a fan of the Commanders and you go to training camp and you want them to win, watch with your eyes, not your phone. And if you do watch with your phone, don't put it on the internet. You're not helping the cause.
Yeah, man, but dude, this is the clout business we're talking about, dude. This is about getting more followers and having people subscribe to your YouTube and whatever else. Like, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I just don't think people are going to listen to you either. And dude, for some people that can't get to camp, they probably love seeing it all.
I'm not telling you that I don't get why it happens. I'm just saying, like,
Right.
Look, the media is not responsible for winning and losing, but we get yelled at all the time like we are. And now we got fans who actually care about it, who are going to training camp and actually negatively affecting the winning and losing, even if it is by some small marginal percentage. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Or there's at least enough paranoid football coaches out there that would believe that's the case. Because football coaches are among the most paranoid in the world.
Do they come in any other kind?
Other teams, right? I believe, and don't quote me on this, but the one thing I know that is happening is there's just less and less and less fan days at training camp across the NFL. I think Philly only does 1. I think the Eagles do 1. I don't believe the Ravens have a lot of fans at camp. I know they do a practice at M&T. Like, I think the more, and I'm not telling anybody to stop or start or do anything. Do whatever you want. I don't care. But the more and more of this and the more and more prevalent it gets, they're just going to stop having fans out there. If it was up to the coaches, and they'll lie and tell you they love it, if it was up to the coaches, they wouldn't be there. I mean, the Commanders were the only team in the NFL having fans at OTAs and minicamp, right? Dude, nobody. Chase Young missing camp was broken because fans were there and started tweeting about it.
Right.
And I remember I called to get official comment, and they're like, yeah, we're not going to comment on voluntary stuff where you guys aren't here. And I'm like, all right, but you got fans putting it on Twitter because they're there. And they're like, oh, yeah, shoot. So it's like, honestly, their fan policies, I think, are a little bit antiquated compared to the rest of the league. Now, there's some teams that have fans there every day. There's still some teams going, to the Bills got everybody staying in a dorm for training camp. Like, there's still some of that around, but it's less and less. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's fewer open practices this year. I wouldn't be surprised if that trend continues. Especially, dude, if we see an overhaul of staff, say we get to February and everything's changing.
Yep.
Who knows what that's going to look like? So fans should enjoy it while they can. Odds are a lot of this is going to change. And I think in the Dan regime, they didn't spend any money, so the sales folks, the ticket folks, they needed incentives to try to take care of their customers. And they're like, oh, you can come to practice, blah, blah, blah. And I think as so much of this is all going to change, I kind of think that could change too. But dude, here's the thing. If you want to post a video, post a video. But don't give out formations and plays and, oh my God, Logan Thomas threw a pass. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing is where the fans are, it's basically an all 22 angle. Logan and I could do a film breakdown on our podcast based off fan videos. We would get yelled at for it because we could give actual useful information. But so could a scout from another team. It's just, I don't know. You mentioned it, and I was like, that's a good thing to bring up. So I did. JP Finlay, you can listen to him 10 to 2 weekdays on 106.7 The Fan, Beltway Football Podcast as well with Mitchell. And if you want to hear the roast of Pete as he is on his way out to take a new job up in Connecticut, you can go back on the Odyssey app and listen to that. And if you want to hear Pete cry, then you listen to Beltway Football from yesterday.
I don't know if he ever actually cried. It got close. But he may have held it together.
All right. Well,
yesterday we played golf and he was terrible, so he might have cried.
Yeah, them's the breaks sometimes. All right, man. Appreciate the time. I'll see you next week out there at camp.
Okay, bro. Later.
That's JP Finlay with us here on the Hoffman Show. Just destroying Anthony's story of how he got booked. And as I know that JP sometimes murders a clock or two. And, look, JP was on, and we went way long. Whoopsie daisies. That's all right, though, because coming up next, we're going to play Take Command for you. Speaking of good breakdowns, Logan Paulson on the first couple of padded practices. Training camp 6 at 6 coming up at the top of the hour. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on that free Odyssey app.
DC has a new home for your favorite songs from the 80s.
Tom Petty, Def Leppard.
Nobody plays more 80s.
Bon Jovi,
Prince, 94.7
Madonna, Bruce Springsteen.
The Drive.
They come from every race, heritage, and background. The extraordinary mosaic that is the U.S. military. Now, Universal Circus salutes our troops with a special military appreciation night, Thursday, August 10th. Join guest ringmaster Karina Delgado of 94.7 The Drive as we celebrate the heroes who stand tall out there so we can do what we do in here. Military Appreciation Night, Thursday, August 10th. Go to UniversalCircus.com. Sponsored by McDonald's of D.C., Baltimore, and Eastern Shore.
You're staring at the computer screen and have written, then deleted the same sentence over and over again. Your work needs to get done, but the writer's block is real. Well, that's where the free Odyssey app can help. With thousands of podcasts to boost your mood, inspire you, or even teach you a thing or two. Jump into This Little Light with Flea, Fly on the Wall with Dana Carvey and David Spade, or the buzzy Odyssey original, The Set. Download the free Odyssey app and start listening. That's AUDACY. Your favorite mood break, your Odyssey.
At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs.
How do your clients know that?
Because Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, the highest standard for a financial advisor. It means we're there for our clients and always put their interests first.
So wait, You do it because you have to?
No, we do it because it's the right thing to do. Our clients trust us with their retirement savings, and we know how important that responsibility is. So we take the time to really get to know them.
Get to know them how?
We make sure we understand their unique goals, finances, health, family, and lifestyle so we can tailor their portfolio to their specific needs. Our goal is to help them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Sounds like a big responsibility. You must make big commissions then, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We have one single transparent fee that's structured so we do better when our clients do better. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again to JP Finlay for joining us. Again, if you want to check out his show, 10 to 2 daily over on 106.7 The Fan, which you can listen to live on the free Odyssey app. Our Pick 6 at 6 coming up at the top of the hour. But right now, Take Command Thursday. Taking a look at the offense through the first 2 days of practice. Logan and I started off trying to talk about the quarterbacks, but then we quickly veered into the offensive line and how they have done. So you'll hear that veer, and here we go on a Take Command Thursday.
the whole offense, quite frankly, looks a little bit better to me in that since the pads have come on. So, Sam's looking better. I think it feels like they're kind of, I won't say game planning because that's not the right word, but accounting for elements of the defense that they weren't counting for early on in the installs, or guys are just getting more comfortable with the plays that are called versus the defense. I mean, that's one of the things that I always found really helpful as training camp went on, is you get really good at blocking your defense, right? Because you see it every single day. You're like, oh, the tight end's to the right, I'm going to get a 3 technique, I'm going to get a 6 technique, I'm going to get the backer plussed over, this is how I'm going to hit this combination. You just get 1,000 reps at that. And so I think they've just gotten more comfortable. I think it started for me like last Friday. I want to say it was their first day of doing team run. They didn't have pads on, but they were running like I mentioned on the show, like a lot of pin pull stuff. And I felt like the O-line kind of came to life a little bit, and I feel like they've just been getting better and better and better each day. And so, we were talking about before the show started how you felt like the offensive line needed to come together a little run blocking. But when I watch it, I get the all 22, I get the end zone angle, I get the sideline angle. I see lanes being created. Now, are they perfect all the time? No, but I see space in the front, which is something that last year when you watched the run game, wasn't really happening. So to me, that's really good, because then it's just about, can we be a little bit cleaner on these combinations? Can we be a little bit cleaner with the back reading the runs out? So as long as that continues to progress the way it's been progressing the last 2 days, I think this offensive line is going to be pretty good. And so I mentioned Friday, Saturday, and then obviously today. What is today? Today is Wednesday.
Today is Wednesday. We've had 2 padded practices since the unpadded's on the weekend.
Yeah, so obviously there's been 4 practices, but I will say since that run installation, the group has come together in pass pro a little bit better. You can tell they're starting to feel each other out. How to, one of my favorite plays from today was Wiley was getting bulled by Casey Toohill. The slides to the right. Gates does a great job overtaking the nose, and he's kind of posting with his inside hand on the nose. Eyes to Wiley. He sees the bull, big chip help, kills the bull, perfect pocket to the right side. And then in that same breath, you get Chris Paul winning a one-on-one against Fedarian Mathis and Leno winning his one-on-one. So, I just feel like they're starting to get a vibe a little bit with each other. And this definitely feels like, something we talked about this offseason. I know we're supposed to be talking about quarterbacks, but I feel like this is.
I was going to say, let's just shelve the quarterback for a few minutes because we're in it now, and I don't want to lose a couple of trains of thoughts that have already left the station.
Yeah, and I feel like this is such an important part of Sam Howell playing better or looking more comfortable, and so I think that seeing that all come together, seeing that chemistry, because it's something we mentioned this offseason, was this is definitely going to be a group that's going to be playing better than the sum of its parts, and I think you're starting to see shades of that, which is great because what are they, 7 practices in? So they've still got a little bit of runway left. Obviously, first preseason game next weekend, but I think they've got a lot of time. And, we talked about this off the air briefly. They are getting a lot of work done each and every practice. I think that's also kind of one of the reasons you see a very kind of pronounced progression with that group.
Yeah. So a couple of things on the O-line. You're 100% correct that from my vantage point on the sideline, never getting to hit rewind, watching it live, it definitely seems like the first team defensive line has really dominated some of those periods. And specifically, I think of yesterday's 9-on-7, which it's funny because they actually don't think they did 9-on-7. It's a 9-on-7 structure, if you will. It's a run period. There's no outside skill guys or no DBs, but I think it was actually 8-on-8. There's a safety that was hanging out in the back. Anyway, it was a run period.
Yeah.
And it felt like John Allen or Daron Payne or someone was giving the running back a hug in the backfield every single snap. Yeah. And then, the 2s get out there, it's not quite as bad, and the 3s get out there and they popped a couple. But I do think that once you get into teamwork where passes are on the table, play actions on the table, runs on the table, you have seen definitely a much more even distribution of wins. And that's how it should be, right? We talk about, I talked about this on the radio yesterday. The way I evaluate training camp is you first have to figure out, based off the setup of what you're watching, who's supposed to win the drill. And some drills are kind of designed for the offense. Some drills are kind of designed for the defense. If it's a team blitz period, the defenses should win more snaps because they're blitzing. And the offense doesn't know where it's going to come from, whatever. If it's, 7-on-7, it's slight advantage to the offense. And so, are the percentages right?
And the most even 50-50 fair competition is when you're in a true 11-on-11 team period. And there definitely you're still seeing some tackles for loss. You're still seeing some sacks. You're still seeing, pass breakups and all that 100%. Kind of stuff. But you also see a much more – you're starting to see, I think, by the day, to your point, the offensive line get a little better. You see a couple of runs pop today. Curtis Samuel had some really good touches today. And obviously Robinson and Gibson and Rodriguez and Jonathan Williams continues to impress as well. I just think that, there has been some dominant stretches, which I think, honestly, I'm happy about because it gives me hope that this defensive line is everything that we think it can be.
Right.
But also, rep by rep, the offensive line is getting better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think you mentioned 9-on-7. 9-on-7, having done that drill, is pretty much like a defensive drill. They have 2 extra guys usually in the formation, which is fine. And it's not always true 9-on-7. Sometimes you bring 3 tight ends. Sometimes you got a full, but you know what I mean? It's
sure.
But approximately their goal is to be +1 in the run fit. And it's to make it hard for you. And so I will say that while that drill is not always the cleanest, one of the things I really like seeing is guys, when when the defense knows it's a run, combinations creating movement. And so sometimes they hang a little bit too long on the combinations, whatever, linebackers run through, whatever. But seeing Chris Ball and Nick Gates forklift John Allen out of a gap the other day was pretty exciting. That gets you fired up. And then we've talked about Wiley and Cosme and how they've been in the run game. And I think obviously they're better kind of in combination working with each other, but they're so fast off the ball. Their get off is excellent, and their ability to kind of close the space to their D linemen. So Payne in some situations, Sweat for Wiley, and kind of keep windows in the run game is really cool. And I think again, 9-on-7 is a run centric or this defense centric drill. But when you get in a team run even, which is more realistic because you can throw it a little bit, you see kind of, again, the holes are a little bit wider, the reads are a little bit slower, and the RPO stuff's there, the keeper game's there's some screens that they run in that period. And I just see a more efficient offense because as they've kind of rounded the offense out, they've gotten more efficient down to down. That's really what it's been. It's just they've just gotten more efficient as they go. So I think that's a good sign to me. And it's kind of in terms of install, that's what you want to see. It's going to be tough early on, I think, to be efficient, right? Because you're learning a new offense. And then to see that efficiency slowly ramp up, guys knowing where the target's going to go, the combinations being nice and thick. Juan Castillo and Terrell Wharton deserve a ton of credit, I think. Because, we were, I was kind of concerned that they weren't doing run stuff in the offseason. And
it was kind of one of those things where it's we got a pin in it. We're gonna watch and see if this was a problem, but it's too early to have already called it a problem.
That's a better way to say it. Yeah, and I think it shows you that offensive line development is not always in live periods. It's kind of like boxing or sparring, And for them, all that work they're doing on the side, all that work they did this offseason seems to be coming to fruition now, which is a good time to have it. So I think it's I'm pretty excited, obviously pretty excited. I know fans will oh my gosh, Logan's excited, but it's looking good. The offense is progressing in a nice way. It's looking like a healthy offense. There's answers versus different looks. There's answers in the blitz period. Do they always hit it? No. Today, Jacoby had a rep where it was an A-gap pressure. He's got to hit the shallow cross, and the plugger just kind of gets in the way of the throw at the last minute. He has to hold it, and he has to throw it in the dirt. That's a win for the defense. But the fact that there is an answer, right, that you can get to the shallow cross, even versus A-gap pressure. There was a corner blitz today, and they had an answer where they were able to throw the receiver right now, or they ran a wheel, and they got the ball to the back right away because, they identified that it was a pressure look. So I think that's good, and I think you'd like to see maybe, as the offense gets a little bit more efficient, more efficiency in the deeper stuff. But I'm every day has gotten better, and I think that's a testament to the staff and the players.
Yeah, I also like the way that they're constructing some of the stuff that they're doing. There was a period today where they went the split was we were expecting 1-on-1s, O-line, D-line, and then 7-on-7 on the other side of the field. Yeah. And what they did instead was cluster work on the skill position guys, the pass game stuff. So it was 3-on-3, 4-on-4 type of stuff. And you're working combinations, and DBs get to work on passing stuff off, receivers get to work on their releases, and making sure if we're going to switch release this, we don't run into each other, and the spacing is right, and all those kinds of things. And then on the O-line D-line side of the field, it was actually kind of the same thing, and it took me a second
to realize like what was happening, that it was really an offensive line drill, because I was like, it doesn't look like the defense is actually trying to win here. Like I was trying to figure out like, okay, is one of these guys like a live rusher and it's a one-on-one and they, you don't know if it's going to be your guy. Like I couldn't figure out what the drill was for the first 3 or 4 reps. And it turns out it was a combo drill. And like that's the kind of isolated work that I just haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And something that they never did as far as I can remember in the Gruden era.
It was a Callahan thing. Callahan used to do stuff like that. He called his a pod drill, where it's 5v4, and essentially it's the same thing. There's no linebacker in the game. So it's just literally like, we're working combos, like D-line, good luck, right? Yeah. There's no one to come off to. So, but it's super isolated work, and like this is the time of year that you can do that stuff. And I loved it, and I'd have to think that it's going to help this team. And by the way, they were doing it for like 20 minutes. Like these periods are long, and they're getting a lot of reps in at the same thing over and over again. And that's something that you and I have talked about, and veering off a little bit from the specific here, but like that's something you and I have talked about, in your career, that there were times where you're just like, well, this is my 8 reps today. And these guys are getting a ton, even the threes are getting a ton of reps, which is just going to make sure that everyone's a better player because they've actually practiced. And so that was something I wanted to ask you, because we've talked, and we'll talk more about this probably later in the week, just the volume of reps or whatever. But like, does the practice, because I don't get to watch a ton of practice because we're doing segments, we're like walking around talking to people. So I don't get to watch, like, what does the cadence of practice feel like? Does it feel like urgent throughout?
Yes, but it also doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
Like, the funniest moment of practice today, which was enhanced by the conversation that Nikki and I were having on the sideline while it was happening. So the referees were out at practice today. Yeah. And, Eric always kind of has the same cadence. It's, they break the huddle, get on the ball. Yeah. Ball is hiked, and go get it. Like every single play. Go get it. I'm like, who's he talking to? Like which guy? Who's the go get it guy? And then it's get off the field. And like, he's making sure that it's efficient. But it's not like they're running hurry up. It's just like get off the field so the next group can get in the huddle. Right. Or if you're supposed to be in the huddle, get your ass in the huddle. But the officials were out there and they had thrown a flag on a particular play. And they were in a little group huddle taking forever like they would in a real game to discuss, because I think there was multiple penalties and Ron's kind of waiting on them. And eventually, like, Eric had, the players are used to the cadence. Eric had sent in the play. They broke the huddle. Referees are still kind of, lollygagging back to their positions. The umpire is like, whoa, we're not ready yet, like sprints in to stop the snap. And Eric just obliterates the officials. It doesn't matter right now. We got another play to run. You can talk to us after. Get out the way. And it was funny because right before that, I had said to Nikki, as it was kind of taking too long, I was like, is Eric going to yell at the officials too? And sure enough, turns out the answer is yes. So to answer your question, like, it does not feel rushed. It just feels like a good, consistent tempo on a metronome of like, this is what an NFL game feels like. The play clock goes, the next snap happens, and you just keep doing that until the drill is over, or until your reps are over and you switch from the 1s to the 2s to the 3s.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear, because like when you, like, some of the more efficient offenses I've been a part of were like that. Like practices were like that. There was an urgency. You're not rushing, but you're urgent, and I think it just allows you.
It's game speed.
Yeah, to get more reps in, to work your conditioning, to again, like we talk about the individual work, we've mentioned that already, but also like there's really no replacement for like being on the field with your guy, like working through in-game adjustments and being like, oh, that I was a little loose on that. I got you this next one here. Let's go the play calls in. You know what I'm saying? And like, oh, hey, with the slides there, and just getting volume in time on task is so important. And the way to do that is make sure you've got a good cadence. So I think that's great. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that reward with the offensive line. Obviously the defense is still doing a great job. I'm not saying, but like in our earlier conversations about training camp, like the defense was dominant to a certain extent, right? So now it's kind of evening out a little bit. The defense is still doing a great job. The defensive line is still doing a great job. The linebackers have flashed, like the secondary is doing great, but to see the offense kind of start to match that intensity of a defense that I think we both think is going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Is awesome. So,
yeah. One thing that I that I really like that they did. They did a ton yesterday. They actually did it a lot today too. I was trying to think, but yeah, they definitely did it today too. Was mixing the ones and the twos. Both sides of the ball, but especially on the defensive side of the ball. And to me, that's something about the O-line, or something that's helpful for the O-line, because yes, it is very helpful to get better at football, to go against someone the caliber of John Allen every snap, against Daron Payne every snap.
But it's not really though. I think that's the thing.
But the thing is, I think what you were about to say is exactly what I'm about to say, which is that helps you actually get really good at blocking John Allen. Yeah. And the problem is John Allen's not Dexter Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence is not the next guy. And so even if the next guy up is a Big Phil, is not as good as John Allen, or F.A. Obata is not as good as John Allen, it's a different challenge. Yeah. And so making sure that you're not just getting good at one thing and you're not just solving one problem, I think is helpful for this O-line as they figure out how to react to all situations, all personnels, all different types of rushers, all different types of guys in terms of how they play the run, and getting that mix and match, I think, has been really beneficial. And maybe it's actually been one of the catalysts for them coming together a bit as a unit these last couple of days.
I think that's totally true. I also think it's important to note, and you've probably experienced this in your life a little bit too, like if it's too hard, if the task is too challenging,
yes,
I can't work my technique or my rules or anything, because I'm just
right. If I had to go try to block, had to go try to block John Allen, you could give me infinite number of reps. I'm not going to get any better at it, because he just kicked my ass every single time. Right. And I wouldn't learn anything. I would just be in pain.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like that's what was going on with Sadiq. And so, it's weird to see, Chris Paul come in and play well, against John. But I feel like he had time with a little bit lesser competition to really hone in on technique and angles and positioning and punch and position on the double teams. And I think there is a lot of value there. So I do think it's great to mix it up. It's not exclusively twos. I think what they did yesterday was 4 reps, ones versus ones. And it was 4 reps, ones versus twos, and they kind of went through that way. So they're still getting 1 versus 1 rep. But I do think that just taking a little bit off the gas pedal allows you to really solidify some of those techniques, especially along the offensive line, and see concepts in the back end too. If you're always going against a coverage group that's just locking you down or runs it exactly the same, like you said, it's not getting you better the same way. So I do think that that's a really smart move by the staff. And I think it leads to a good constructive learning environment for the team, which ultimately is what this is. It's just it's like school. Yeah. It's like class, So I'm encouraged, and I think I will continue to be encouraged. And, I think Cleveland's going to be a really exciting thing to watch, just as a fan, to kind of see where the team is at and see how sharp everything looks. Cause this is totally changed. I coach at the high school. Watching practice every day with EB and how he runs it, it changes my perspective on how to maximize the teaching of a training camp practice. And I think that's a cool thing to see.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just after 6 p.m., final hour of the show. Of course, Bet MGM tonight. Coming up in just a little bit. Tomorrow on the show, Yates on a Friday. More training camp observations. The guys will be back in pads tomorrow out in Ashburn. Ant, you're going to go to practice tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, I got stuff to do in the morning, so I will not be out there, but I look forward to your report. What was that for? What was that face for? Are you sad that you won't get to hang out with me?
Yeah.
Is that what that?
I'm not going to lie, Craig.
Ant did like the tears, eyes, or hands at the eyes, tears face. It looked like you were mocking me for a second. I was like, don't make me come over there.
I was a little lonely out there, I'm not going to lie today.
Was Linnell there?
Nope. He filled in for Kevin. And
oh, that's right. Was Rooster there?
Yeah, but I didn't see Rooster till the end of practice. I didn't know he was there.
Normally, he's the first person you hear.
Exactly. I didn't see or hear him.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was a little lonely. JP and B-Mitch, they had to do their show. I mean, I've seen some people like in passing, but
yeah,
for the most part, I was like,
you know Nikki, you know Sam,
yeah.
You know Kime.
Yeah.
Going out with Kime, you'll learn some stuff.
All right.
That's how I made it on the beat.
I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Hang out with Kime. Just be like, hey, John, Craig said to hang out with you so I could learn some stuff. And he'll be like, great. Come on, Anthony. That's my favorite Kime thing is when the drill moves. He's like, come on, let's go. Like, all right, let's go. Where are we going? Down here. Got to get a better view.
Yes, sir.
So that way we can have things to talk about at 6 o'clock. It is time for our Pick 6 at 6, where we pick the 6 most interesting things from training camp each and every day. Talk about them, let you hear from some of the participants. And, of course, the big story today was that camp was not nearly as intense as it has been by design. The Commanders took the pads off today, a much lighter practice. They worked on a lot more skill, fundamental work in terms of some of the new install level type of stuff. It was kind of fun for the fans that were out there because it was a lot of deep balls and play action and stuff like that. So you got the big oohs and the ahs from all that. Quick game, well, the more important for their season probably is not exactly the most exciting thing to watch. Play action, chuck it deep, hell yeah. But Rivera wanted to make sure that his guys stay fresh. Training camp, a marathon, not a sprint. So a lighter day today. Here's the head coach.
Right. The biggest thing, more than anything else, is really about the recovery. We get the data, we get the analytics of what it takes, during practice and how hard they're going. And when you start seeing the guys getting up in the orange and red areas, there's concern. So the timing of this practice worked out very nicely for us. We'll bring them down a notch. We'll take the intensity level off them a bit. The retention part, what they've learned, that's probably the biggest thing that we're trying to get out of this. And so to see the things that we did, minimal mistakes today. There were a couple things that that EB corrected on the fly, that Jack corrected on the fly, but for the most part, I'm really pleased with the way they practice with minimal.
I wonder what this is me going full sports science-y trainer mode, but I'm wondering what their orange and red zones are. Like, so what they've got is all this data tracking in terms of I know they have GPS. I don't know whether they have heart rate monitors. And I would be curious to know if they have heart rate monitors, if they can see guys starting to run a little hot during practice. And it's like, okay, these guys, their average heart rate's higher or it's elevating quicker than we would like, which shows they're getting tired. Or do they have any kind of recovery data on guys? Like I wear this thing for those watching on the stream. They can see me. If you listen on radio, you can hear me tapping. It's a Whoop. Which you've probably seen ads for or seen around. It's a heart rate monitor that you wear all the time, and they've got a recovery formula. And, I know when I wake up in the morning based off of their app, which is taking in a bunch of data on me, how my body's feeling, essentially for the day. That's an oversimplification, but how I hydrate, how I eat, how I sleep affects all of these things. And for these guys, there's always been a push and a pull in professional athletics between, hey, we want to get as much data as possible on our players because it allows us to treat their bodies the best we can. And we also, as players, don't want you to have all that data because then you might use it against us in a contract negotiation. So there's this constant push-pull on the sports science of how much do you want the teams to have versus how much do you want to keep private. But it might be some heart rate adjacent stuff. It might be they do some baseline testing in the mornings of readiness, which you can do like with, lights that light up and see how the reaction times are. And if guys are slow and sluggish, they're probably tired. Or it might just be as simple as they look at the GPS data. They look at how many days they've done. They're like, that's too many miles per day. That's too many yards per day. We're running a little heavy. We need to back off. So there's all different kinds of ways that they make these calculations. You can obviously anticipate some of it based off of play volume. Because even, for instance, yesterday, they've started to do a little bit of squad rotation at certain position groups. Defensive line yesterday, I noticed that James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill got a lot more reps than John Allen and Deron Payne and Montez Sweat and Chase Young. The day before, those guys were heavier. The ones were out there a ton. And especially at a position like D-line where you rotate in a game and seeing the quote-unquote 2 defensive line with the 1 defensive backs and Cody Barton and Jamin Davis, that's not abnormal. So you hardly think twice about it till you realize, man, it doesn't feel like Allen's been out there in a while. Oh, okay, you start counting reps, and it's 4 for the 1s and 8 for the 2s kind of thing. And so those are, when that happens, that's on purpose. They're trying to, condition certain guys. So, hey, this is going to be a heavy day for you, light day for you. They're trying to get some of the mix and match of different things. But today happened to be a light day for everybody. They kept off the contact, and they'll get ready to go again tomorrow. By the way, all this stuff is working. Each unit seems to be getting a little better. It seems to be fairly evenly matched. Defense probably winning a little bit more than offense overall, which you would imagine, because I think that they're the better unit. But the offense has definitely gotten better. You heard it in Take Command. Logan has said, the offense it was rough first couple of days over the weekend, especially Saturday was real rough. But when the pads came on and the O-line could make some contact, things got a lot better for the offense. Rivera commenting on that after practice today.
Yes, and quite honestly, all the plays have been beyond basic. And the reason being is, Eric throwing a lot at him. He's not piecemealing it. He's not, starting from the bottom and work. No, we're learning and we're learning quickly. A big part of it is what we accomplished during OTAs and minicamp. We had a lot of stuff thrown at him during OTAs and minicamp. I thought the guys handled it very well. Now coming into this thing, the biggest thing was pick up where we left off. What's the retention? They did a nice job coming back and practicing and playing at full speed.
They have. And when you talk about plays being complex, there's just so much motion and so many different formations and things that it's just a lot of mental load. It's a lot of neural load. But ultimately, you wind up running the same routes. It's just how do you get to them? But it is little things okay, the play calls are longer. If I can call a play and it's, formation, protection, route concept, and now I got to call formation, motion, new formation, route concept, it's a longer sentence. And so those things, and by the way, it's not just one motion. There was a play the other day where Terry, they wound up running it 3 times because they wanted to get it exactly right. And Terry had to run across and then run across on a basic motion and then run behind the quarterback and then come back. And it's wait, was I supposed to go across and then back and then around? Do I go across and then around? Which one am I supposed to sprint? Which one am I supposed to jog? Because there's different tempos that all have different purposes. So the same path might be done at different tempos to time it up differently and get a slightly different reaction from the defense, pull them in a slightly different direction with a different level of urgency. Sometimes as you're just trying to beat them to a spot, get out in space. Sometimes it's we're actually creating a hole behind them. We need to pull this guy this way to create the hole going back that way. There's all kinds of ways in which this offense uses motions, formations, and personnel, and it's a lot. And so a day like today is a really good chance to kind of slow it down and have that. But this has been the expectation since OTAs. They use a lot of this stuff in OTAs, and Ron talked about today just building on that and how it wasn't install in OTAs. All right, guys, we'll do this again the first week of camp. No, they built on what they did, which has helped close the gap a little bit between the offense and the defense, which is great because obviously the defense is not just building on what they did in OTAs, but is building on what they've done the last 3-4 years, depending on how long guys have been here. But the system has been the same all 4 years of the Rivera era with Jack Del Rio, with slight tweaks and some changes they've made to update some things along the way. But the offense has definitely grown, continued to get better, had a pretty good day today by all accounts, although today was definitely a day where they were designed to win. But they did, and that's all they can do is complete the task. Overall, it helps that there's not a lot to distract them at this camp. It is football, people that are happy in the stands. The ownership is a distraction, if you will, air quotes, in that, hey, what's it like to have a new boss that you really like? What's it like to have fans that are happy? It's not the, hey, there's another Washington Post, another ESPN, another whatever story that just dropped. What do you think of it? You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And Ron Rivera, for one, quite likes it that way.
Well, I think the biggest thing, Bram, more than anything else is, during last year, the last couple of years, we've always tried to focus in on what's important. We try to stay, in the moment of practice, in the moment of the game, and we really try to avoid that. So I think getting to where we are, the guys had a great reaction to everything, I think, but also there's still a task at hand. Just because things have changed, we still have to do our job. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean, that it's going to be any easier. It's still hard, very, very difficult. So we got to continue to keep our focus on preparation and getting ready for the season.
The difference is, though, you're not emotionally exhausted. These are human beings, Ron included. This isn't me talking about just the players now. Ron Rivera is very, very human. And when you have to deal with all this stuff and you are forced to compartmentalize things because you hear things about the team owner that you don't really want to work for that guy, but you don't really have a choice at this point, and they're paying you pretty well. So let's go out and provide for our families, and we might as well win some football games while we're here. You don't have to deal with all that stuff, and it just allows you to be fresher and more productive. Your mentals are a lot cleaner, and you can focus better on the task at hand because you're not fighting against this other thing that is trying to enter your brain. You don't have to deal with the questions about it. So even when you get asked the questions now about ownership, it lifts you up instead of pulls you down. And so, Ron, you can almost hear him trying to convince himself in that answer that, we just tried to focus on what's important. Yeah, they tried, and I think overall they probably did a pretty good job. I don't think they were undone by distractions last year. They were undone by talent and bad decisions, and if they were undone by ownership, it was the pressure to go get a guy like Carson Wentz. Very silly. And the price they paid, sillier. I'm not going to really let Ron off the hook for that one. It was his decision. He looked at the analytics, smacks table. But the lack of emotional exhaustion has got to feel better this year than it did last year. And the excitement and the hope, you're working towards something. You're not just trying to feel like you're running away from, or you don't feel like you're just running away from something at all time. So training camp pick 6 at 6. 6 most important things, or not necessarily most important. We don't even need just the most important. We're not Ron Rivera. We can go into the interesting. Although this one, I would say number 4, both important and interesting. Chris Paul with the ones today, even though Sadiq Charles was back, but Ron was quick to say, not all the way back.
Well, I think it's going very well. I mean, just so you guys know, Sadiq tweaked his calf, and so Chris has gotten a couple of more opportunities. Last 2.5 days, he's been running with the ones since it happened.
Yeah, since it happened. Not because it happened, since it happened. And I don't think that was an intentional language choice, but it's also not inaccurate. I don't think that Chris Paul's giving those reps back, at least all of them. I think they'll probably split reps for a little bit, and if Chris Paul continues to play better than Sadiq Charles, which he has, then Chris Paul is going to be the starter at left guard. We went through our confidence rankings yesterday here on the show. I said, we took the starter as of right now. And technically, Sadiq is the starter right now on the depth chart, unless this change has actually happened and they haven't told us yet. We'll get a better feeling for that probably tomorrow as Charles is back even more in practice. But, he was the only guy that we said, don't think he's going to wind up winning the job. The incumbent is not the favorite. And I would imagine that Paul wins the job, and Sadiq is going to have to battle to stay on the team. And I don't say that lightly because, it seems like, for all I know, he's a good kid, and works hard and all that stuff. So this is not wishful thinking, and I realize the seriousness of an adult losing their job. So I don't say this flippantly, but we all know the league, and sometimes you get a couple years into even a mid-tier draft picks career, and you just be like, go, like, this ain't working, man. Like, we're gonna let you go and go try this somewhere else because it's not working here. We got some other guys we want to take a look at. And as Mason Brooks, this undrafted free agent, has continued to crush it at guard, if he has a better camp than Sadiq Charles, I don't think at this point, 3 years into Sadiq's career, when he's had all these injuries, that you'd wind up keeping Sadiq based off the upside. Like, you're just at the point where you go, I don't think that upside's going to be realized. I don't like what I've seen. So they've got decisions to make long term. Sadiq could still wind up being the starter. He could turn it around and something could click and the talent could win out because he's definitely got a lot of it. But I think Chris Paul is going to wind up being the left guard. And there's some defensive linemen that have been having side chats with the reporters. I can't remember who. I think it might have been JP who tweeted this. Might have been Nikki, might have been John. I don't know. Someone, sorry to whoever did the work here, but said that, like, Chris Paul might be the best guard on the team, and Sam Cosmi's playing pretty darn well. So we will see how that shakes out. My guess is that it is going to be with Chris Paul being the starting left guard. Rookie DBs, obviously the first and second round picks this year. Both were talked about today. Kendall Fuller got asked about Emmanuel Forbes. Now his position mate is coming along.
I think he's just starting to play faster. When you first get in there trying to learn the defense and things like that, sometimes you allow your mental process to slow you down. And, he's been coming out here mentally starting to pick it up faster. So you see him reacting faster to certain plays and certain routes and things like that. So he's definitely improving each and every day.
Love to see that, and I think we have seen that. There's been some times where he's gotten beat on some things, comes back a couple reps later and makes a play. Obviously had the pick 6 on Saturday, but him getting hands on balls is something that they're going to need to happen this year. That's why they drafted him. Quan Martin, they drafted him because he can do a little bit of everything, which is why Ron Rivera has him doing a little bit of everything.
First, I'll say, his role really isn't defined. Okay. Yes, we've had him working at a couple of spots primarily, not just the one spot. But he's been doing some stuff with the nickel/Buffalo position. He does some stuff at the safety spot. So he's continuing to work, continue to get those opportunities. But I wouldn't say, we've defined it and said this is who you are and stay there, because he does work with the different groups. And you see him with the 1s and the 2s, and you've seen him also with some of the 3 work as well. We're just trying to get him as much work as we can. At the same time, we have a core of guys that we're trying to get him assimilated to so that he's now part of that group of guys.
So that is the latest on how the rookies are doing. I think we'll see Quan in a bunch of different roles. I think Forbes is going to start on the outside, and he's going to be their top guy, and hopefully the start of a long and prosperous career as the number 1 corner in Washington. Quan, I think, is going to play mostly in the Buffalo this year. They'll probably use him occasionally with Cam Curl and Derek Forrest, and maybe he's on the Buffalo to start, and a receiver goes in motion, and instead of running across and do that, he just drops back. They'll use it to disguise coverage. He'll start in the Buffalo, then actually go play a post, and Cam will drop down to the Buffalo. Like, there's a lot they can do with him. And these are not things that I've necessarily seen, just things that I'm conceptualizing. If I can conceptualize them, Jack Del Rio and his staff can. So there's a lot of upside for Quan. I just hope that he thrives in the versatility, and it's not something that we look back and go, damn, like, could they just give the guy a spot and let him learn it and let him play and be good? The versatility can be an asset for a player. Sometimes it can be a detriment because you wind up just getting thrown around as opposed to being in one spot and thriving. It's a little bit of what Cam Curl, I think, is hoping to do, settling more into the post this year, but he'll still definitely, and has so far through training camp, gotten plenty of reps at the Buffalo spot as well. Last but not least, real quick, no sound on this one, just an update. Jamin Davis was at practice this morning and then ultimately left. They had a 1 o'clock court hearing. And this from the Washington Post's Nikki Jovala. The Commanders linebacker agreed to a revised plea bargain in his appeal of a reckless driving conviction Thursday, but a Loudoun County Circuit Court judge did not consider the deal because it was, quote, not substantially and materially different from Davis's last proposed deal. Hearing is scheduled for August 31st. This plea deal that was reached today included a maximum of 8 days of jail with a minimum of 4 days served. Also includes a supervised probation that could be extended beyond a year, 6-month mandatory suspended license with no ensuing restrictions, a fine, and a ton of community service, and the possibility of another 4-hour driving course in Loudoun County. He already has completed an 8-hour course and a written essay on reckless driving that Davis would post on his social media accounts. So, the case has not been resolved. Still TBD. The judge certainly seems to want a heavier sentence for Davis than the 4 to 8 days in jail. And depending on how much jail time he gets and how much, if that can be suspended in terms of, hey, you can serve this after the season, there's still on the table the possibility that Davis could miss time, either practice time or a game this year because of this reckless driving charge. But we shall see. August 31st, the next hearing. So that obviously something to keep in the back of your mind. But Davis will not miss anything up until then. So got a couple weeks here of clean sailing. That is our pick 6 at 6. 6 most important things at training camp each and every day at 6 o'clock. Make sure you're tuned in live here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 for it. By the way, 8 days. 8 days until game 1 of the preseason. That'll do for the pick 6. When we get back, more Commanders talk here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Of course, you can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980, where we stream live each and every day, all 3 hours, unless I forget to start the stream, and then it's 2 hours and 45 minutes because the first segment from today is missing. Whoopsie daisies. Our shout out to our guy Blaine, who's been watching the entire show. And he's like, I thought I was losing my mind when the show didn't show up at 4 o'clock. No, Blaine, I've just lost mine. So a lot, by the way, real quick, just a moment of gratitude. Anthony, across 3,000 YouTube subscribers for the Craig Hoffman page. So at Craig Hoffman on YouTube, if you're a YouTube person and you're not following along, like you're now way back in the line. The good news is it doesn't really matter. You get the same content as people who were on board relatively quickly. But yeah, we're across 3,000, which is something that I've been putting a lot of effort and time into, and very much appreciate everybody who subscribes. So moment of gratitude. Muchas gracias, merci beaucoup, for that. You just yawn into the microphone.
Oh, that is. You were so eager too, though.
I heard it. What do you want me to do?
I thought I had my mic. See, that's the problem with having these headphones on. That's why I tend to like put them down, because when I have them down, I can't hear you.
Sounds like excuses to me.
Dang. So are we at 100 yet?
Nope. We're gonna be yeah, because that's a 10. That's a tenner.
I thought it was a 5er.
No, that's.
I thought coughing into the mic was.
Yeah, no, I'll give you. It was also an accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't like gross negligence.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
All
we
right,
need 5 more points.
All right, that's 30 for Anthony, and that needs to get changed to 95.
We're really racking these up.
Fine points, Anthony. What I think is going to happen is probably tomorrow one of us will do something dumb, and then
70-30 split. That's what
we get to. Well, you 65-35 if you ask me.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna put that on you. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna keep it clean between now and tomorrow.
I'm proud of you, Craig.
I'm gonna try to anyway. We'll see. Your boy picked up a 15 yarder, if you will, early in the show today. So yeah, I feel like we're gonna have ourselves lunch on Monday, paid for by us.
Yes, sir.
Mostly by me.
It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Dang, that's bad.
Yeah, that's not good. It's not good. We'll clean it up. Training camp, man. Just trying to eliminate mistakes. Get a little bit better each day. Anyway, the point is, I'm very grateful for everyone that subscribed on YouTube and, watches us on demand or live, watches Take Command. That's been doing incredibly well on YouTube on the fans page. So, again, muchas gracias. All right. Wanted to kind of hit a bunch of random stories before we get out of here for the day. Real things coming up. Curtis Samuel with the doozy for Real Things today, amongst others. But there's just so much random stuff. And I used to do this segment when I did weekends, Anthony. We call it This, That, and the Other Thing. So just 3 random stories from anywhere in sports that maybe not worth a full segment to talk about, but things that we wanted to touch on before we get out of here. A little music to it, and I'd say off we go. First one, this one we can blow by real quick, but how about your boy Jamarco Jones in Tennessee? Jamarco Jones had been starting most of the day or most of training camp so far for the Titans at right tackle, but today, he hit Chance Campbell with a crackback block in practice, okay? Something that would have been a penalty, a 15-yarder potential ejection, depending on how it went down, in a game. And he did it to his own teammate in practice. Linebacker Azeez El-Shair got in Jones' face. The two had to be separated, and Jones was ejected from practice. Tuesday, he got in a shoving match with Jeffrey Simmons on one of the first plays during teams, and the two were separated and kicked out of practice after yanking each other's helmets. And then the Titans were off yesterday. So these are 2 incidents in 2 days of practice And remember, their starter, Nicolas Petit-Frere, he is suspended the first 6 games of the season for violating the league's gambling policy. So the Titans, who then cut Jamarco Jones after these 2 incidents, are now going to be down in the first 6 games to their 3rd string right tackle. Good job, Jamarco Jones. Did Rooster use him as the dum-dum of the day today?
No, his dum-dum of the day was a boyfriend. Have you heard about the Barbie movie?
Yeah, I've heard about the Barbie movie.
So there was a guy who was asked by his girlfriend to go see the Barbie movie, and he said he would go, but he's required to wear pink, and he didn't want to wear pink.
So he broke up with the girl?
Yes. They ended up breaking up.
It's his loss. Just on principle, that's his loss.
Yeah.
All right. Jamarco Jones is my dum-dum of the day. Bro, you're an NFL, like, have some respect for yourself and your teammates. That's what I would say to that. So that's this. Let's head to that before we get to the other thing. That is the continued demise of college sports, which we are headed in a gigantic, vicious, but also kind of beautiful and beautifully stupid circle. Because what's going to ultimately happen as the Big Ten has secured permission to explore adding Oregon and Washington. The Big 12 obviously added Colorado recently. The SEC is looking to expand as the ACC is coming apart at the seams. What's going to happen is we used to have 5 power conferences, right? And really you had like 6, 7 in basketball. Like the Big East was obviously a bigger deal back in the day. May it rest in peace. But what you're going to wind up happening is the SEC and the Big 12, the SEC and the Big 10 are just going to basically buy out college football. You're going to have those 2 mega conferences. The Big 12 is hanging on for dear life with a program like Colorado as the Pac-12 falls apart. But ultimately, like, you lost Oklahoma and Texas, so everyone else is going to eventually probably leave for Big 10 or SEC. And then those 2 conferences are going to have divisions. And what you're going to have for college football specifically is an NFL with an AFC and an NFC and like a Central, a South, an East, and a West. And it's going to go back to being what it used to be, just called different names. It is beautifully stupid and a vicious circle. And it's happening because the same people who refuse to let the athletes get paid and lament to anyone with a microphone or a recorder on or off the record of how NIL is ruining college sports are greedy as hell and want all the money and to consolidate as opposed to just letting the beautiful traditions and the things that make college sports great, and by the way, very lucrative as it were, continue to go on. It's so dumb, Anthony. They are just, it's kind of like what we talked about with some of the media reporters we have on, where all the content fractured off because everyone wanted to have their own app and their own streaming service and their own this and own that. And all of a sudden it's like, man, this is really hard. Maybe I should get like Fubo TV or YouTube TV or Hulu so I can have all my channels at once. And it's like, oh, you mean what you had with cable? Like sometimes we don't realize that we have the actual best thing and we ruin it. And then we wind up going so hard in fixing it that we go back to exactly where we were. The vicious cycle, man.
Yeah, I'm not liking it, man. At all.
It's hard to care about college sport. It's so transient anyway, because like that's the thing. The athletes always move through college sports quickly because it's the nature of college sports. But you had the fundamental rivalries and like a fundamental understanding of the structures. And yeah, there's been changes over time. You know, like the Big 8 became the Big 12 and all those things. And, you know, that was preceded by like the Southwest Conference, I think it was. And so there's been these like little tweaks and changes over time. But what has happened over the last decade and a half has been just complete warp speed and things just completely spiraling out of control. All right, that's this. That's that. how about the other thing? What was the last story that we had, Anthony? We had Jamarco Jones. We had college football stuff.
Mechie?
Fill me in.
So John Mechie, he just returned this season. He missed last season because he was diagnosed with leukemia.
Mm-hmm.
And basically he's having a good camp, and he talked earlier about relying on faith and trusting in God to like basically get him through whatever he was like battling and things of that nature. So, it's good that, he's back on the field. He's looked like he's, having a good camp, and I mean, that's all you can really like pray for real, when you get diagnosed with something so early.
Yeah, it's scary. He's just 23 now, so it would have been 22 and he's diagnosed. Crazy story, man. Like he's grew up in Canada, was born in Taiwan, like played at Alabama. So a really cool story. By the way, like I'm not a particularly religious person. This is not me, but I find conversations about faith and like some of the things that people take out of it really fascinating, like on an intellectual level. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, probably around this time actually, because we were playing the Terry stuff with the pivot. Terry, I would talk religion with Terry McLaurin for hours. Like he's clearly thought a lot about it and what it means to him, and like the idea of giving in to a higher power and what it can do for you. Whether that higher power is like you believe in God or God's or just your family, your community, like your team. Like it's to me it's about like faith and spirituality and what all that stuff can do. And I'm obviously not going to go down this rabbit hole now because the segment's over and it's probably not that interesting to a sports audience. But if that stuff interests you, I will just say Terry's interview with the Pivot talking about that stuff for like the last 10 minutes or so is like one of the more interesting athlete thoughts I've ever heard about it. And it's definitely worth your time if that's interesting to you. See, Anthony, you turn the mic off and then you sneeze.
I saw and heard you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but the audience didn't.
Yeah.
I'm just showing you that's how it's done.
Thank you.
All right. Quick look at what's trending when we get back. Real things, real people said, into real microphones on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
Pretty late night in DC sports. Nationals are off. They're in Cincinnati starting tomorrow. Mystics back in action tomorrow as well. They host the Sparks at 7. And the Spirit are in Orlando tomorrow. 7 p.m. is the kick time. NWSL, including the Spirit, will start to get some of the players back from the World Cup now that the group stage is over. And a couple of players have been eliminated, but not for tomorrow night's games. Of course, the U.S. through to the group stage, albeit barely. They face Sweden 5 a.m. on Sunday. That's what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, tomorrow on the show, Clinton Yates, because it's a Friday, and that's what we do. Anything else that we got that we know is queued up for tomorrow, Anthony?
No.
Okay. Last Friday is when we did the roster projection, right? We just haphazardly were like, you know what? I think I want to do a roster projection. We did. I said we plan to do it every Friday through camp. I kind of dig that as an idea, kind of your weekly update. Obviously, next week we'll have it leading into the game. So that'll be fun. I also wonder if Ron starts to get asked questions tomorrow about who's going to play next week. Like, will Sam play in the preseason? As for tonight, if you're so inclined, Hall of Fame game, Anthony, will you watch?
I will be locked in because I have nothing else better to do.
Okay. We're going to dinner with my sister. That sounds far better than watching terrible football.
I would love. Where are you guys going to eat?
I'm not telling you that. It's somewhere around here.
I
don't mind telling you that. I'm not telling the world.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
You don't want, paparazzi outside, taking.
Yeah, just
I got you.
Bad operational security, if you will. Can't be doing that.
All right, can you tell me what kind of food you guys will be eating?
Let me look up them. I can't remember exactly how this restaurant classifies itself. It's a mix of stuff.
I hope it's indoors because it looks like it's about to pour down.
Yeah, it is. It is. There's some Western European, some Southeast Asian in there, some Mid-Atlantic inspiration. So it's a chefy kind of place. Looking forward to it. What are you gonna have for dinner tonight?
It's a great question, and I do not have an answer.
Whatever the fine cooks at Georgetown Prep cook up for you.
So during the summer we don't get dinner, and we had Philly cheesesteaks for lunch, and I didn't really want that for dinner. So
yeah, so you didn't get two. Okay, gotcha. All right. I think that's enough talk about what we're gonna eat. Everyone's driving home. Like, damn, now I'm hungry. Sorry about that. Hopefully you're almost there. And to help you along your way, it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, a couple of bites from some Commanders players. First of all, Beyonce is going to be at FedEx Field this weekend. And I think that came up in Curtis Samuel's press conference, and he showed his love for Queen Bee.
I mean, I be feeling good out there. I be running fast. Feel like I got a halo over my head.
Okay, we see what you did there. Okay, what else you got, Curtis?
I'm just crazy in love with the game.
I love that's the end of his press conference. And he definitely, if you saw the video of this, flashed. Nikki Javala cut it up, posted it out. Big old smile. He knew exactly what he was doing. It almost felt like, when, is it Fallon or Kimmel? I think it's Fallon. Has players secretly, use phrases at press conferences. They did it. The last one I feel like they did was Steph Curry in, the NBA playoffs. And then you don't know about it till 2 months later when they go on the show. And it's like, we actually had you, and they're wild sayings. They're hilarious. It almost felt like that. I wonder how many Commanders players will be at Beyonce.
You were supposed to do that on Monday.
What? Oh, yeah. No, I was supposed to insert Drake lyrics into the show on Monday.
I would have been so lost.
Yeah. That's part of the problem of why I don't think I did it, is because I also would have lost myself. Which is kind of a remix of an Eminem lyric, but whatever. Kay Adams did a really good job when she was at Commanders Camp yesterday. Had sit-downs with Chase and a bunch of other folks, including Sam Howell. Did have some fun with Sam Howell. And hey, can you say something nice about South Carolina?
Can you say something nice about South Carolina?
Oh, boy.
I can't, no.
Nothing? Can you say something nice about Duke?
Definitely not, Duke.
Wow.
That was a lot less time to say something nice about it. I hope that he means the school South Carolina. Because if it's the state, Sam Howell and I are going to have to get into a fight. You can't be dissing my home state like that. I know there's like a whole barbecue battle, but at least say ours is good. Nice cities. Anyway. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Hoffman Show, Team 980.